The sterile walls of the HFY research facility loomed over Alice Reed as she sat in her cell, her white lab coat now stained and torn. 3 days had passed since the aliens captured her during the raid on the human military base. They wanted something specific, the revolutionary combat serum she had developed for Earth's special forces. In the adjacent laboratory, Nova pressed her delicate purple fingers against the scanner. The young HFY researcher's luminescent eyes reflected her excitement as she studied the chemical composition of the human serum. Her species had never seen anything like it before. The complex molecular structure promised to enhance strength, speed, and healing capabilities far beyond normal limits. The human scientist refuses to reveal the complete formula, Elder Kix growled, his tall frame casting a shadow over Nova's workstation. Without the stabilizing element, any attempt to replicate it could be catastrophic. Nova's antenna twitched thoughtfully. The HFY believed themselves superior to humans in every way, yet this serum challenged everything they thought they knew. Their own soldiers were dying in increasing numbers as the human resistance grew stronger. They needed this breakthrough. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly, Nova suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of trying to replicate it, we should test how it interacts with our biology first. Elder Kix's eyes narrowed. Are you volunteering? Nova hesitated. The HFY had strict protocols about experimental procedures, but her curiosity burned stronger than her fear. Yes. I am. Proceed with caution, Elder Kix warned. We cannot afford any mistakes. Later that night, after the facility had grown quiet, Nova carefully extracted a small sample of the serum. Her hands trembled as she prepared the injection. The security cameras had been looped, a small trick she had learned from studying human technology. She knew this violated every protocol, but the potential knowledge was worth the risk. The needle pierced her skin. The serum entered her bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pain began. Nova collapsed against her workstation, knocking over vials and equipment. Her vision blurred as her body temperature skyrocketed. The serum wasn't just changing her, it was rewriting her at a cellular level. Through the haze of agony, one thought crystallized: the humans hadn't just created a combat enhancement. They had engineered something far more powerful. As consciousness slipped away, Nova caught her reflection in a shattered piece of glass. Her luminescent eyes had changed color, and beneath her purple skin, her veins pulsed with an otherworldly glow. The transformation had begun. Human military science was about to unleash chaos not just in her body, but throughout the entire HFY society. And locked in her cell, Alice Reed smiled, knowing exactly what was about to unfold. Nova awoke to the sound of alarms blaring through the facility. Her body felt different, lighter, stronger, and somehow wrong. She pulled herself up from the laboratory floor, surprised by how easily she moved despite the previous night's agony. Security breach in Laboratory Section 7! The announcement echoed through the corridors. All personnel report to emergency stations. Nova's heart raced as she caught her reflection in the lab's polished surfaces. Her usually purple skin now showed patches of human-like complexion, and her luminescent eyes had developed rings of brown around the pupils. The serum hadn't just affected her biology, it was transforming her into some kind of hybrid. Researcher Nova, report your status. Elder Kix's voice crackled through the communications system. She ignored it, knowing she couldn't let anyone see her like this. In her cell, Alice Reed heard the commotion and allowed herself a small grin. The serum was working exactly as designed, not as a simple combat enhancement, but as a fundamental bridge between human and HFY DNA. She had engineered it to do more than just enhance. It would force the HFY to experience humanity firsthand. Nova stumbled into the specimen storage room, her new abilities overwhelming her senses. She could smell things she'd never detected before, hear conversations through walls, and feel every vibration in the facility's structure. But most disturbing were the thoughts, human-like emotions and impulses flooding her mind. I need to understand, she muttered, reaching for the remaining samples of the serum. If she could analyze her own transformation, Maybe she could reverse it before anyone discovered what she'd done. The door slid open with a hiss. Elder Kick stood in the doorway, his tall frame rigid with shock as he took in Nova's altered appearance. "What have you done?" he whispered, reaching for his communication device. Nova moved without thinking. Her new reflexes carried her across the room faster than any Vectri could move. She grabbed Elder Kick's arm, surprised by her own strength as she pushed him against the wall. "You can't tell anyone," she pleaded, her voice carrying an unfamiliar edge of desperation. "This is why we can't trust human science." Elder Kick spat. "Look what it's done to you. You've become contaminated with their primitive nature." But Nova could see the fear in his eyes, not disgust, but fear of what she represented. The Vectri had always claimed superiority through their pure bloodline and advanced evolution. Her transformation threatened everything they believed about themselves. "The humans aren't primitive," Nova realized, memories of Alice's research flooding her mind. "They're adaptable. They engineered this serum not to defeat us, but to change us. To make us understand them." Elder Kick's expression hardened. "You'll be terminated. We can't risk this spreading." He reached for the alarm panel on the wall. Nova felt another surge of human emotion, panic, mixed with a very Vectri sense of determination. Her transformed body moved on instinct. She struck precisely, using her new strength to render Elder Kick unconscious with a single blow. As she looked down at her former superior, Nova made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't stay here, couldn't let them study or terminate her. But she also couldn't leave Alice behind. The scientist was the only one who truly understood what was happening to her. Nova pulled up the facility schematics on her data pad, her enhanced mind processing the information faster than ever before. She had 12 minutes before the next security sweep. 12 minutes to break out a human prisoner, escape the facility, and disappear into the endless city beyond. The serum hadn't just changed her body, it had changed her very understanding of existence. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she could have sworn she heard Alice Reed's voice whispering, "Welcome to the revolution." The detention level's emergency lights cast an eerie red glow as Nova raced through the corridors. Her newly enhanced body moved with a grace she was still struggling to comprehend. The unconscious forms of 2 security guards lay behind her. She'd taken them down with moves she somehow knew but had never learned. She found Alice's cell at the end of the highest security block. The human scientist stood ready at the door, as if she'd been expecting this moment. "Your eyes," Alice gasped as Nova deactivated the energy field. "They're changing faster than I calculated." "You knew this would happen?" Nova's voice carried both accusation and wonder. "You engineered the serum to do this specifically?" Alice stepped out of the cell, her eyes sharp and alert. "We needed to prove that humans and Vectri could coexist. What better proof than a successful hybrid? But we never found a willing test subject, until you." A distant explosion rocked the facility. Nova's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of heavy boots and energy weapons charging. "The security teams are closing in. We need to move." "Not yet." Alice grabbed Nova's arm, pulling her toward the laboratory section. "We need the remaining serum samples. If they study them, they'll find a way to prevent the transformation. And," she hesitated, "there's something else you need to know about what's happening to you." Nova's newly developed human instincts screamed danger, but she followed Alice. They reached the lab just as another explosion shook the building. Through the window, Nova saw flames rising from the city. The human resistance was launching an attack. "Perfect timing," Alice muttered, quickly gathering the serum samples. "I managed to send a signal when they first brought me in. Commander Ross never disappoints." Nova's enhanced senses suddenly sparked with warning. She spun around to find Elder Kick standing in the doorway, surrounded by armed guards. His face showed a mix of horror and fascination as he studied her increasingly human features. "Observe, brothers," he announced. "This is what human corruption looks like. Their serum doesn't enhance, it defile. It turns our perfect form into their primitive state." But Nova could see the truth in his eyes. It wasn't disgust that drove him, it was fear. Fear of change, fear of losing the Vectri's supposed biological superiority. And something else, fear of the strange new power radiating from her transformed body. You're wrong. Nova stepped forward, feeling strength surge through her hybrid form. This isn't corruption, it's evolution. The serum doesn't just change biology, it opens minds. Makes us understand each other in ways we never could before. Elder Kix raised his weapon. Then you leave us no choice. Both subjects must be terminated. We cannot risk. He never finished the sentence. Nova moved faster than any Vectri or human could, crossing the space between them in a blur. The guard's energy weapons discharged, but her enhanced reflexes let her dodge the blasts. She disarmed 2 guards with moves that felt like muscle memory, though she never trained in combat. The serum, Alice called out, throwing a vial toward the melee. It's not complete without the catalyst. Nova caught the vial mid-flip, understanding flooding her hybrid mind. She wasn't just experiencing physical changes. The serum was unlocking abilities that neither species possessed alone. As if to prove it, energy crackled around her hands, a manifestation of power that made Elder Kix step back in shock. Impossible, he whispered. This goes beyond mere genetic manipulation. That's the point. Alice smiled, reaching Nova's side. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our biology. It's our ability to adapt, to change, to become something new. And now, thanks to you, Nova, we can prove that Vectri are capable of the same. Through the windows, Nova saw resistance ships emerging from the clouds, their weapons lighting up the night sky. The revolution wasn't just beginning, it had been planned from the start. And she, with her hybrid form and newfound powers, was living proof that change wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The research facility trembled under the resistance bombardment. Nova and Alice sprinted through smoke-filled corridors, the sound of battle echoing from every direction. Nova's transformation was accelerating. Her skin now shifted between purple and human tones like a living camouflage, and the energy crackling around her hands had intensified. The serum is reaching its final phase, Alice explained as they ducked into a maintenance shaft. Your hybrid DNA is stabilizing, but it's doing more than we expected. The energy manifestation wasn't part of the original design. Nova flexed her fingers, watching arcs of blue-white power dance between them. I can feel it growing stronger. Like it's responding to my emotions. She glanced at her reflection in a broken screen, her eyes now swirled with patterns of both species, beautiful and alien at once. A squad of Vectri elite guards rounded the corner, weapons raised. Surrender the human scientist, their leader demanded. This is your final warning, traitor. Nova stepped forward, feeling the hybrid energy surge through her body. She raised her hands, and to everyone's amazement, the guards' energy weapons shut down. The power flowing through her wasn't just physical, she could somehow interact with technology itself. That's impossible, one guard whispered. She's become something else entirely. Alice watched with scientific fascination. The serum must be combining Vectri bioelectric capabilities with human neuroplasticity. You're not just a hybrid, Nova, you're the next step in both our species' evolution. An explosion rocked the shaft, throwing them all off balance. Through a newly formed hole in the wall, they could see the resistance ships engaging Vectri defenders in the night sky. Commander Ross's voice crackled through hidden speakers in Alice's torn lab coat. Dr. Reed, if you can hear this, head for the south landing pad. We've got extraction team ready, but the window's closing fast. Nova made a split-second decision. Using her new abilities, she created an energy barrier between them and the guards. You have a choice, she called out to her former colleagues. The Vectri don't have to remain static. We can all evolve, all become something greater together. Some of the guards lowered their weapons, clearly affected by her words and the display of power. But alarms blared again, and Nova's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of heavy reinforcements approaching. They're deploying the Mark 7 combat units, she warned Alice. Mechanical soldiers. If they reach us before we get to the landing pad, Then we'll need a distraction. Alice pulled out the last vial of serum from her coat. The catalyst you took earlier? It wasn't just to complete your transformation. It can be weaponized. Nova understood immediately. She took the vial, feeling the hybrid energy in her body resonating with it. With precise control, she levitated the serum into the air and split it into tiny droplets, each crackling with the same energy that now coursed through her veins. Get to the landing pad, she told Alice. I'll handle this. As Alice rushed ahead, Nova faced the approaching sound of mechanical walkers. The Mark 7 units appeared, their metallic forms filling the corridor. Behind them, Elder Kix watched from what he thought was a safe distance, eager to see his corrupted former student eliminated. But Nova wasn't the same person who had timidly followed Vectri protocols. The hybrid energy surged through her, connecting with the suspended serum droplets. In a display of power that made Elder Kix stumble backward, she sent the energized catalyst into the Mark 7 unit's cooling systems. The effect was instantaneous. The combat machine seized up, their Vectri-based biomechanical systems reacting to the catalyst. Energy cascaded through their forms, transforming and disrupting their carefully engineered perfection. Nova didn't wait to see the full effect. She sprinted after Alice, knowing that what she'd done wouldn't just disable the machines. It would prove that even Vectri technology could be changed, improved, evolved. Behind her, Elder Kix watched in horror as his perfect weapons transformed, becoming something new, something that combined the best of both species' engineering. And in that moment, he finally understood what Nova had been trying to tell him. Resistance to change wasn't preservation, it was stagnation. The South Landing Pad was a war zone. Resistance ships exchanged fire with Vectri defense platforms while ground forces clashed below. Nova's enhanced vision cut through the chaos, tracking multiple battles simultaneously. Her hybrid mind processed it all with newfound clarity. She could see both sides' tactics, understand both ways of thinking. The extraction team's pinned down. Alice pointed to a group of human soldiers taking heavy fire near their target landing zone. Commander Ross himself led them, his tactical genius evident in how they'd held position despite being outnumbered. Nova felt the hybrid energy building again, stronger than ever. Her transformation had reached its peak. Her body now shifted freely between Vectri and human characteristics, adapting to her needs. The power crackling around her had turned into a swirling aura, drawing stunned looks from both sides of the battle. I can clear a path, she told Alice. But there's something else we need to do first. She held up her hands, letting the hybrid energy flow into the facility's communication systems. They all need to see the truth. Every screen and holographic display in the facility flickered to life. Nova's enhanced abilities let her broadcast not just images, but the very experience of her transformation. Both humans and Vectri froze in their tracks as they felt echoes of what she'd been through, the pain, the change, and most importantly, the understanding. Look at what we can become. Her voice echoed through the complex. The serum doesn't corrupt, it enlightens. It shows us that our differences aren't barriers, they're opportunities. To demonstrate, she launched herself into the battlefield. Her hybrid form moved with impossible grace, deflecting energy bolts while disarming fighters from both sides. But instead of attacking, she used her powers to show them glimpses of her new perspective, how she could now see the beauty in both species, the potential in their unity. Commander Ross lowered his weapon first, his experienced eyes recognizing the game-changing moment. Doc, he called to Alice. Your serum did more than you promised. She's exceeded every projection. Alice agreed, watching Nova with pride. The hybrid state is perfectly stable. She's proof that our species can do more than just coexist, we can evolve together. But Elder Kix wasn't ready to surrender his worldview. He emerged from the facility with the facility's ultimate weapon, the Purifier, a device designed to eliminate genetic impurities from Vectri bloodlines. You think this abomination is evolution? He snarled. I'll show you the true Vectri way. The Purifier hummed to life, its ominous glow building to overwhelming brightness. Both humans and Vectri scattered, knowing its devastating potential. But Nova stood her ground, her hybrid form radiating with its own light. "The true Vectri way?" she questioned, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "Look around you, Elder. Look at what our rigid pursuit of purity has cost us. We've stagnated while humans constantly adapt and grow. They don't fear change, they embrace it." The purifier fired, its beam of concentrated energy rushing toward Nova. But instead of destroying her hybrid form, something extraordinary happened. The energy swirled around her, transformed by her unique biology into something new. The very weapon designed to enforce purity became proof of the power of adaptation. "Impossible!" Elder Kick staggered back. "The purifier is absolute." "Nothing is absolute," Nova replied, her hybrid energy now pulsing in harmony with the transformed weapon's power. "That's what humanity taught me. There's always room for change, for growth, for becoming something more than we are." Around them, the fighting had stopped completely. Vectri soldiers stared in awe as their most sacred weapon was transformed. Human resistance fighters lowered their weapons, recognizing that this moment was bigger than their conflict. Commander Ross stepped forward, his weathered face showing cautious hope. "Maybe it's time both sides admitted we could learn from each other." The sun began to rise over the horizon, its light catching the swirling energies around Nova's hybrid form. In that dawn, both species could see a new future taking shape, one where difference meant strength, and change meant hope. 1 month after the battle at the research facility, the Great Hall of the Vectri High Council chamber was filled to capacity. For the first time in history, both humans and Vectri sat together in the ancient room. Nova stood at the center, her hybrid form now a perfect balance between both species, the energy around her a constant reminder of what was possible. "The serum has been tested extensively," Alice reported to the assembled leaders, standing confidently beside Commander Ross. "Nova's transformation wasn't a fluke, it's repeatable, controllable, and most importantly, voluntary." Nova stepped forward, her dual-natured eyes scanning the chamber. "But it's more than just physical change. Each transformed individual gains not just hybrid abilities, but hybrid understanding. We experience both ways of thinking, both ways of being. It's impossible to hate what you truly understand." Elder Kix, now stripped of his former authority, was present as well. The events at the facility had shaken him deeply. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice carrying through the hushed chamber. "I thought purity meant strength. But I've seen what Nova can do, what she represents. True strength lies in adaptation, in growth, in change." Commander Ross nodded. "The war cost both our species dearly. But this," he gestured to Nova, "this is the future we could never imagine. Not victory through destruction, but evolution through understanding." Nova raised her hands, letting the hybrid energy flow visibly through the chamber. The Vectri counselors leaned forward, their natural sensitivity to bioelectric fields letting them feel the harmony in her transformed state. The human representatives watched in awe as the energy took forms they could comprehend, a bridge between ways of perceiving reality. "We're establishing the first hybrid academy," Nova announced. "A place where volunteers from both species can undergo the transformation, learn to control these new abilities, and help guide our peoples toward a shared future. But it has to be a choice, change cannot be forced." Alice stepped forward with a new revelation. "The serum's effects go beyond what we first understood. Each hybrid develops unique abilities, combining traits from both species in unexpected ways. Nova's technopathic powers were just the beginning. We're seeing transformations that suggest the potential for abilities we never dreamed possible." The chamber erupted in discussion, but Nova wasn't finished. Her hybrid senses could feel the currents of change flowing through both species. "But the greatest power isn't in our new abilities," she continued. "It's in our new perspective. When you can truly see through another's eyes, feel with another's heart, think with another's mind, that's when real change begins." Commander Ross unveiled the final proposal. "We're recommending the establishment of hybrid zones, cities where transformed individuals from both species can live together, developing their abilities and building a new culture that combines the best of both worlds. The Vectri High Council leader rose, his ancient frame straight with purpose. Our species chose stagnation out of fear. We thought ourselves perfect, forgetting that true perfection lies in the ability to grow, to change, to become more than we are. The humans, whom we dismissed as primitive, understood this fundamental truth. The vote was unanimous. As celebrations erupted throughout the chamber, Nova felt the hybrid energy surge with joy, not just her own, but the collective hope of both species. The war that had seemed endless just months ago was being transformed, just as she had been, into something entirely new. Later, standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city, Nova watched ships from both species flying peacefully through the sunset sky. Alice joined her, data pad in hand. The first volunteer group starts their transformation tomorrow, she said. Are you ready to teach them? Nova smiled, her form shifting subtly in the fading light. They'll each find their own way, their own unique expression of what it means to be both, to be more. She held up her hand, letting the hybrid energy dance between her fingers. This was never just about changing bodies. It was about changing minds, changing hearts, changing the future. As night fell, the city below began to glow with both Vectri bioluminescence and human electric lights. Together, they created something beautiful, something that couldn't exist without both. Just like Nova herself, just like the future they were building, proof that the greatest strengths come not from purity, but from the courage to embrace change and the wisdom to grow together.